Snow whipped across the Montana mountains as Ethan Hale leaned over the half-frozen body of a Mustang that shouldn't have been alive. Its ribs showed through mud-soaked skin, steam rising weakly from its nostrils. The horse tried to stand once, legs trembling violently, then collapsed again with a sound that didn't belong to a wild animal, but to something terrified. Ethan didn't know it yet, but saving that horse would lead to the moment a hoof nearly shattered his jaw, and the discovery of a hidden brand that would place a target on both their backs. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe. Stories like this happen more often on these ranch lands than people imagine. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I want to know how far these stories travel. Sumistig snow drifted sideways across the valley as Ethan slid his arms beneath the Mustang's neck, feeling the tremor of cold running through the animal. The river beside him churned with sluggish ice, the kind that drags down elk and deer every winter. He knew the Mustang had been minutes from slipping beneath it for good. Montana winters didn't negotiate. Ethan wasn't a man who hesitated, especially when life, any life, was slipping away. "Easy, boy," he murmured, though the horse didn't understand him. Or maybe it did in some instinctive way. The Mustang's eyes flickered open, brown and cloudy with exhaustion. Ethan felt the faint push of its breath against his forearm, shaky but present. He tightened his grip and hauled. Snow clung to his beard, the wind slicing through his flannel like knives. He'd grown up in the Bitterroot Range, and he knew cold. But this cold was hunting the Mustang specifically, crawling into its bones, settling there with the kind of finality that made ranchers bury animals before the sun even set. By the time Ethan reached his truck, he was panting, steam billowing from his mouth like smoke, and the horse's body felt heavier with every step. He angled the makeshift ramp he always kept in the bed of the truck for injured cattle and guided the Mustang up inch by inch. The horse didn't fight. It was too far gone. When the back gate shut, Ethan leaned both hands on the metal and let his breath slow. "You hold on," he whispered. "Just hold on tonight." And the road home was a sheet of white. The mountains disappeared into the storm, and the only sound was the rattling of the trailer and the occasional groan of wind hitting the truck broadside. Ethan kept checking the rearview mirror, searching for movement, any sign the animal was still breathing. He'd seen suffering before. Born on a ranch, raised on a ranch, he'd buried everything from calves to old border collies. But there was something different about this horse. Something in the way its eyes had followed him, as if begging, no, insisting, that he not walk away. Still, he pushed the thought aside. Emotion didn't fix broken bones or warm, frozen blood. What fixed things were heat, medicine, and stubbornness. He had plenty of all three. When Ethan backed up to the barn, lantern light spilled out through the open doors. His neighbor, Lucas Granger, had beaten him there, lean and weathered from decades of ranch work. "You weren't kidding," Lucas said, stepping toward the trailer. "That storm came out of nowhere." "It's blowing in from the North Ridge," Ethan answered. "Help me get him inside." They lowered the ramp. The Mustang didn't move. Ethan climbed in, slid his arms under the animal's chest and coaxed, "Come on, boy, I know you've got something left." Lucas placed both hands on the horse's flank, adding gentle pressure. The Mustang's legs trembled violently, and for a breath, Ethan thought the animal might collapse again. But then, slowly, it rose, shaky, blindly following the warmth of the barn. Inside, the smell of hay, old wood, and horse sweat wrapped around them like a blanket. Ethan guided the Mustang into the recovery stall he used for injured livestock. He covered the horse with 2 wool blankets and placed heating pads along its sides. Lucas brought buckets of warm water and a small space heater, positioning it carefully so it wouldn't spook the animal. "That's a wild one, all right," Lucas said, observing the Mustang's thick neck and scarred shoulders. "Where'd he come from?" "Riverbank, East Trail," Ethan answered. "Looked like he'd been running for days." "From what?" Ethan didn't know, but he'd seen something, panic deep and old in the Mustang's eyes, as if the horse wasn't just exhausted, it was escaping something. Hours passed. Ethan stayed by the stall long after Lucas left. He cleaned the Mustang's wounds, long scraped lines along the flanks, as if it had crashed through brush at a dead sprint. He checked for fractures, infections, anything he could treat before calling the vet in the morning. The storm beat against the barn roof. Tin rattled, snow hissed. Around midnight, the Mustang's breathing steadied. Its ears twitched, its head lifted for the first time. "That's it," Ethan whispered. "You're safe. Nobody's chasing you here." The horse blinked at him, slow, deliberate. Then, unexpectedly, The Mustang stretched its muzzle forward until it touched the sleeve of Ethan's coat, a gesture of trust, or maybe gratitude. Ethan felt something swell in his chest, something he hadn't felt since his father died, and he'd taken over the ranch alone. Connection. But dawn brought a different animal. The moment Ethan opened the barn doors, light spilling across the stall, the Mustang lunged, teeth bared, eyes wild. Ethan barely dodged, stumbling backward as hooves struck splinters from the wooden wall. The horse reared again, slamming the gate with a force that rattled the hinges. What the hell? Ethan grabbed the side of the stall, steadying himself. There was no fear in the Mustang now, only fury. Every time Ethan moved, the horse reacted, snapping, pawing, shaking its head like something inside it was screaming to get out. "This isn't you," Ethan murmured, keeping his voice low. "Something scared the life out of you, but I'm not your enemy." The Mustang only grew more frantic, circling the stall in tight, panicked bursts. That was when Ethan saw it, just for a second, a dark patch under the tangle of the horse's mane, a mark, like burned flesh. He stepped closer, carefully, waiting for an opening. When the Mustang turned sharply, its mane flipped, and the symbol revealed itself fully. A brand, faint but unmistakable. Ethan's stomach dropped. He knew that mark. Everyone in Montana ranch country did, and nothing good ever came from crossing the people who used it. The stall fell silent, except for the jagged breathing of the Mustang. Ethan stood motionless, eyes fixed on the faint, burned-in symbol beneath the horse's tangled mane. The brand wasn't fresh. It had aged, the edges faded, but the shape was still recognizable enough to send a cold current down Ethan's spine. A crooked bar, a split diamond beneath it, and a small horizontal line crossing the center. The mark of the North Creek outfit, a group known in Montana not for ranching, but for something far less honest. They weren't an official operation, not licensed breeders or registered livestock handlers. They worked on the edges of the law, capturing wild Mustangs from protected lands and selling them to private buyers who didn't ask questions. Every rancher in the Bitterroot Valley had heard of them. No one talked about them openly. And Ethan had just brought one of their branded horses into his barn. The Mustang paced the stall, muscles bunching beneath its coat, the fury in its movements now making disturbing sense. This horse had not simply lived a hard life, it had escaped hell, and it had the scars to prove it. Ethan exhaled through his nose, steady and controlled. "So that's what you're running from," he murmured. The Mustang pinned its ears back, not at his voice, but at the memory the brand represented. Ethan stayed where he was, careful not to trigger another attack. The horse was too volatile to approach, and he had no intention of getting kicked in the ribs at dawn. He stepped away from the stall to give the animal space, though he never stopped watching it. Outside, the storm had buried the ranch in white. Snow drifted against the wooden fence lines, and the sunrise had a hazy copper hue from the clouds, still hanging low over the valley. The cold air stung Ethan's cheeks as he crossed to the house, boots crunching through the powder. Inside, he poured coffee and kept staring through the window at the barn. The Mustang's silhouette moved back and forth behind the frosted panes. That kind of restless pacing wasn't normal, not even for a wild horse. Something had been done to it, and someone might come looking for it. He set the mug down hard enough that the ceramic clinked. Damn it. Saving a horse near death was one thing. Saving a horse that belonged illegally to men who didn't respect boundaries was another. But what else was he supposed to do? Leave it to die on the riverbank? No. His conscience didn't bend like that, not even for trouble. A truck engine groaned up the gravel road before noon. Ethan stepped onto the porch, one hand instinctively brushing the snow from his coat. The old blue pickup pulled into the yard and Lucas climbed out, tugging his knit cap lower over his ears. "You check on your new friend?" Lucas asked, boots crunching as he walked toward the porch. "He's awake," Ethan said, "and angry. That's typical Mustang behavior. They get a little strength and suddenly think they're invincible." Ethan didn't answer. "Not yet." Lucas studied him. "Something else bothering you?" Ethan motioned with his head. "Come on, you need to see this." They crossed the yard and entered the barn. The heat from the space heater still radiated, mixing with the smell of hay. The Mustang lifted its head the moment they walked in, muscles tightening like coiled rope. Lucas whistled softly. He really doesn't like company. "Look closer," Ethan said. He moved to the side of the stall, just close enough for the Mustang to turn sharply and expose the brand beneath its mane. Lucas leaned in, then froze. "No," he whispered. "Ethan, tell me that's not what I think it is. I wish I could." Lucas swore under his breath and stepped back quickly, glancing toward the barn doors as if expecting someone to burst through them. "You need to get that horse off your property." "He almost died," Ethan said flatly. "And so might you if the wrong men find out you have him." Ethan lifted his chin. "I'm not handing him over." "You don't hand horses back to those men, Ethan. You deliver them, and you keep your mouth shut. That's how people stay alive." "Lucas, I'm not giving a living creature back to people who burned this into him." Ethan pointed to the branded flesh, voice harsh. "You've seen what he looks like. He didn't escape from some friendly operation." Lucas exhaled, jaw tight. "So what's your plan?" "I don't have one yet," Ethan admitted. "Well, you better figure it out before they figure out he's missing." Thursa dit bisasa, the Mustang reared suddenly, slamming its hooves against the stall door. Lucas jumped back with a curse. Dust drifted from the rafters. "He senses something," Ethan said quietly. Lucas nodded. "Yeah, trouble." But Ethan shook his head slowly. "No, not just that. There was something in the horse's eyes, something Ethan had only seen in animals that had been pushed beyond their limit. A fierce look, not of aggression alone, but of warning. As if it were trying to communicate danger the only way it could. Lucas rubbed a hand over his face. "Look, Ethan, you helped the animal. That's admirable. But this is bigger than compassion. These men, they keep lists. They track their stock. They figure out where things go missing. And you think they'll come here? I think they already know the general area. Snowstorm buys you a little time. Not much." Ethan didn't respond. His mind worked quietly, ticking through scenarios. None of them good. He couldn't call law enforcement. The North Creek outfit worked too neatly in the shadows, leaving no evidence behind. Even if someone tried to investigate, the horse would likely be seized as part of the inquiry. And Ethan knew one thing with certainty. If the Mustang left his care now, it wouldn't survive. After Lucas left, Ethan grabbed a brush and approached the stall again. The Mustang stomped once, warning him. He didn't push. Instead, he crouched just outside the gate, letting his presence be known without threat. "You're safe here," he said quietly, "but I need you to work with me. If someone comes looking, I need to be ready." The Mustang lowered its head slightly, still tense but less explosive. "You didn't attack me because you're wild," Ethan murmured. "You attacked because you thought I was one of them, because of that brand." He paused, letting that truth hang in the air. "And if they hurt you once, like they won't hesitate to do it again." The Mustang snorted and pawed the straw, not in anger this time, but in distress. That was the moment Ethan's decision settled fully into place. He would protect the horse. He would face whatever came. He would not let the North Creek outfit reclaim a creature that had fought so hard to escape. But the cost of that decision would come sooner than he expected. Because as the sun fell behind the ridge that evening, Ethan spotted fresh tire tracks cutting through the snow on the far end of his property. Tracks from a vehicle heavy enough to belong to ranchers who didn't ask permission to drive where they pleased. Tracks heading directly toward his land and stopping near the tree line behind the barn. Saustin Dukanta Ethan crouched near the edge of his property, the wind gnawing at his coat as he traced a gloved hand along the tire tracks carved deep into the snow. They cut across his land with confidence. No hesitation, no attempt to stay hidden. Whoever had driven through believed they had the right to be there. That alone made Ethan's jaw clench. The tread marks were heavy, wide apart. Not a rancher's dually, not a neighbor. More like the kind of modified truck used by people who chased wild horses through rough country. Reinforced bumpers, steel grills, tires thick enough to handle rock and ice without mercy. The same kind of trucks the North Creek outfit used. Ethan rose slowly, scanning the tree line. Snow hung from pine branches like a second skin. Flakes drifted lazily now that the worst of the storm had passed. Everything looked quiet, still. But stillness in Montana didn't always mean safety. Sometimes it meant someone was waiting for movement. His ranch spread wide across the valley, but isolation had a cost. The nearest neighbor, Lucas, lived 2 miles east. The road beyond that was nearly invisible beneath the storm's remains. If the men who had branded the Mustang were out here, Ethan wouldn't hear them until they wanted to be heard. He turned back toward the barn, boots sinking into untouched snow. The Mustang would sense the tension, maybe already had. Animals always did. When he reached the barn doors, he paused, breathing in the familiar scent of hay, winter air, and old timber. Inside, the Mustang stood rigid in the stall, ears pinned, eyes locked on him. "You feel it too," Ethan murmured. The horse snorted sharply, shifting its weight, restless. Its body was healing, but its mind was still trapped somewhere between fear and defiance. Ethan stepped inside and shut the doors behind him. The lantern light cast soft shadows across the wooden beams, the storm's leftover wind rattling the tin roof above. "You're safe here for now," he said, "but we might not have much time." He didn't expect a reaction, but the Mustang lifted its head higher, alert, listening. Later that afternoon, Ethan saddled his mare, Ruby, and rode the perimeter of his land. The storm had erased most tracks, but the heavy prints near the tree line remained. He followed them until they vanished over a rocky incline. From there, he scanned the valley below. Nothing. No trucks, no people, just white fields, black pines, and the faint drifting sound of melting snow sliding off branches. Still, his gut twisted. Someone had been here. Someone bold enough to cross private land, and someone who didn't mind being noticed. He guided Ruby back toward the ranch. When the barn came into view, he saw Lucas's truck again. The old pickup sat crooked near the water trough, engine idling. Lucas climbed out quickly when he spotted Ethan. "You see the tracks?" Lucas asked, his tone low. "I saw them." "Then you know what that means." Ethan swung down from the saddle, boots crunching in the snow. "I know someone trespassed. That's all I know." Lucas stepped closer. "Ethan, don't be dense. You think the outfit just lost a horse and shrugged? They don't lose things. Somebody brought that Mustang this far north for a reason, and now they're backtracking, trying to find it." "Doesn't matter," Ethan said. "They're not getting him." "You say that like it's your decision alone." "It is." Lucas looked at him a long time, lines deepening around his eyes. "I hope you're ready for whatever comes with that." "Först sehen und weiter." Inside the barn, the Mustang's agitation had grown. When Ethan and Lucas entered, the horse shifted defensively, not with aggression this time, but with a survival instinct sharpened by history. Lucas shook his head. "He's been like this the whole time I waited. Something's got him spooked." Ethan approached slowly, crouching near the stall gate. "Easy, boy. You're all right." As if responding to the sound of his voice, the Mustang's breathing slowed slightly. Ethan noticed sweat along the animal's neck despite the cold. Every muscle was tight, ready. Lucas leaned against a support beam. "You need to call Doc Merrill to check on him." "I will," Ethan said, "but not until I'm sure no one's coming around." Lucas lowered his voice. "If they are coming around, you'll want the vet here as a witness. If something goes wrong, they won't hurt the Mustang while I'm here." Lucas didn't argue, but his silence said enough. Night settled early, as Montana winters always demanded. The sky shifted from gray to navy, and the temperature dropped fast enough that every breath felt like needles. Ethan kept the barn lights low, not wanting to draw attention, but he stayed close, pacing between the stall and the doors, checking the shadows through the cracks in the boards. Just after 9, he heard it, a distant engine, slow, rolling, then stopping. Ethan's body went rigid. Lucas, who had stayed despite his earlier protests, looked up sharply. "That's not a neighbor." Ethan crossed the barn silently, boots barely scuffing the packed dirt floor. He eased one of the doors open an inch. Cold air sliced in. A pair of headlights glowed faintly through the trees beyond the pasture. Not approaching, just waiting. A chill much colder than the wind crept across Ethan's shoulders. Lucas whispered, "They're watching the barn." "Yeah," Ethan said, voice steady but tight. "They are. What do we do?" "We don't panic." Lucas let out a bitter laugh. "Ethan, I'm a rancher, not a damn soldier." Ethan closed the door, his mind working fast. "Go out the side entrance, take your truck around the back trail and leave. They might not follow you." "I'm not leaving you here alone." "You are," Ethan said firmly. "If they want the Mustang, they'll come to the barn. I'm staying." Lucas hesitated, jaw clenched. "If I don't hear from you within an hour, I'm calling the sheriff." "They won't come fast enough," Ethan muttered, but he didn't stop him. Lucas slipped out the back, moving low to avoid the headlights. Ethan listened until the faint hum of Lucas's engine faded into the night. The Mustang paced anxiously, hooves clicking against the stall boards. Ethan approached the horse again, speaking low. "They're here for you, but they're not getting you." The Mustang stopped pacing, turning one dark, burning eye toward him. For a moment, just one, the animal's fear shifted into something else. Recognition, as if it understood the danger was real, as if it knew Ethan was choosing to stand between it and the past. The headlights outside flickered. Then the engine revved again, louder this time, closer. The barn doors shuddered under the pressure of the wind, or maybe something far more immediate. Ethan reached for the latch of the stall, not to let the horse out, but to brace it. making sure the Mustang wouldn't be exposed if someone forced their way inside. "I don't know who you belong to," he whispered, "but you're mine now, and I'm not backing down." Outside, the truck engine cut suddenly. Silence swallowed the ranch. Then, footsteps, slow, crunching across the snow, approaching the barn. Ethan exhaled once, steadying himself. The men from North Creek outfit had arrived. The footsteps outside the barn came slowly, deliberately, each crunch sinking deep into the crusted snow. Ethan stood still, one hand braced on the stall latch, the other resting unconsciously near the pocket knife clipped to his jeans. He wasn't armed, not the way most ranchers would be in a situation like this, but he'd grown up in the mountains. He knew how to judge danger by sound alone, and these footsteps weren't from men lost or cold or looking for help. These were men who believed they owned the night. Inside the stall, the Mustang trembled, not with fear this time, but with the electricity of recognition. The horse pressed its body against the back wall, ears pinned flat, eyes locked on the barn doors as if expecting them to explode inward. Ethan kept his voice low. "Easy, boy. They're not getting to you." Another set of footsteps joined the first. He counted 2 men, possibly 3. Hard to tell with the wind stirring drifts against the wooden walls. A voice cut through the dark, deep, confident, not shouting, just loud enough to make sure Ethan heard. "Evening." Ethan didn't move, didn't answer. "We saw tire tracks leading this way," the voice continued. "Storm washed most of them out, but not all. Figured someone might have rescued an animal that wandered too far into the cold." Ethan's jaw tightened. The man wasn't asking. He was fishing, testing how Ethan would respond. A second voice chimed in, sharper, with the edge of someone who liked forcing conversations. "You got anything injured in there, friend? We're just looking to help." Ethan didn't need to look to know the type. Men who smiled with their mouths, never with their eyes. He stepped toward the doors, boots slow across the floorboards. He didn't open them. He didn't even loosen the latch. He simply spoke through the wood. "Barn's closed for the night." A stiff pause followed, surprised silence, the kind that suggested they weren't used to being refused. Finally, the first man replied, "Well now, that's mighty unfriendly. We drove a long way. Roads are icy. You sure you can't spare a minute to talk?" Ethan pushed his shoulder gently against the door, establishing presence. "State your business." A faint chuckle drifted through the cracks. "Man who rescues wild Mustangs should be more sociable. We heard one went missing from the ridge 2 days ago. Hard winter for a horse to be running alone." So they did know. Maybe not everything, but enough. Ethan spoke carefully. "Mustangs roam this valley all the time. Don't belong to anyone." The second man's voice hardened. "Some of them do." Ethan sensed movement, a shift of weight, a sign they were closer now. "What's your name?" the first man asked. "You first," Ethan answered. Another low laugh. "I like you. But we're not exchanging pleasantries through a wall. Open up so we can see each other proper." Ethan didn't move, didn't blink. "No." The wind howled through the cracks around the barn door, making the boards tremble. The Mustang backed further into the stall, head lifting high, nostrils flaring. The first man sighed, a theatrical, irritated sound. "You know," he said, voice smoothing into something dangerous. "When things go missing around here, folks usually try to help us find them. It's the neighborly thing to do," Ethan responded evenly. "I'm not your neighbor." A long silence followed, long enough that the snow outside stopped its gentle tapping, long enough for Ethan to feel his heartbeat press against his ribs. Finally, the man's footsteps shifted. He stepped closer, so close Ethan saw the faintest outline of a shadow pass beneath the door. "We just want what's ours," the man said softly. Ethan replied in the same tone, steady as a fence post rooted in frozen soil. "Then you won't find it here." The man exhaled sharply, frustration breaking through the politeness he had been pretending to maintain. Metal clinked softly outside, like a hand resting on a truck door or a belt buckle shifting. "You run a quiet operation here, mister," the first man said. "No cameras, no neighbors. Hard to get help quick if something happened." Ethan didn't flinch. "You threatening me?" "No, sir. Just stating facts of geography. Montana's a lonely place in winter." The other man stepped in, closer, voice cold. "Open the barn." "No." A beat. Then, "You got 10 seconds." Ethan's pulse surged, but his face stayed calm. "You break in, that's trespassing. Sheriff won't like that." The first man laughed once, crisp. "Sheriff's a long way from here tonight." Behind Ethan, the Mustang began to strike the ground with one hoof, an anxious rhythm that echoed through the barn like a warning drum. The horse's muscles bunched, breath harsh and rapid. It wasn't fear. Not anymore. It was memory and resolve. Ethan turned his head just slightly toward the animal. "Easy," he whispered again. "They're not touching you." Something scraped against the barn's exterior. Boots shifting, men conferring in low mutters. Ethan couldn't pick up the words, but he felt the tension shift. They were deciding whether to force the door. He braced himself. Then, the crunch of snow retreating. Footsteps moving away from the barn. A car door opening. Another. The truck engine roared to life, but the men didn't leave. Headlights washed across the barn wall, blinding bright through the wood slats, sweeping slow, left to right, like a searchlight. They were circling, studying exits, measuring risk, testing whether Ethan would make a mistake. The Mustang's pacing grew frantic, hooves clapping sharply against the boards. Ethan wanted to reassure it, but he didn't dare move too far from the door. The truck crawled around the side of the barn, headlights sweeping across the frost-coated windows. Ethan ducked behind a support beam, just in time to avoid being seen through the thin glass panes. The truck paused, idled. The engine rumbled like a threat too patient to be dismissed. Ethan held his breath. After nearly a minute, a door opened again. Footsteps crunched across snow, just one set this time, approaching the side of the barn. Slow, listening, then a voice, closer than before, almost beside him. "We'll be back in the morning," the first man said, words sliding through a gap in the boards. "You think on whether that horse belongs to you or us." The footsteps retreated. The door shut. The engine revved once before the truck rolled down the slope, disappearing into the dark. Only when the sound faded entirely did Ethan exhale and move to the Mustang's stall. He rested both hands on the gate, grounding himself. "They're coming back," he said quietly. The Mustang stared at him, chest rising and falling, sweat darkening its coat despite the cold. "They won't stop," Ethan continued, "and I'm not handing you over." For the first time since Ethan brought it into the barn, the horse stepped forward, not aggressively, not panicked, but with a measured, deliberate confidence. It lowered its head slightly, inches from Ethan's hand. Trust, earned the hard way. Ethan closed his hand gently around the top rail of the stall. "They're not taking you," he repeated. "Not tomorrow, not ever." But as he said it, he knew something else. He needed a plan, fast. And by morning, the men from North Creek outfit would come expecting answers he had no intention of giving. Ethan barely slept. He dozed in 20-minute stretches on the battered couch in his living room, boots still on, jacket draped over him like a flimsy shield. Each time he closed his eyes, the crunch of footsteps outside the barn replayed in his mind. The slow, deliberate cadence of men who felt entitled to whatever they wanted. When the first blue-gray hint of morning touched the horizon, Ethan rose. His back ached from the couch springs, but he ignored it. He splashed cold water on his face, tied back his hair, and went straight to the barn. Frost coated the metal latch, crackling as he opened it. Warm air rolled outward from the space heater still humming inside. The Mustang lifted its head immediately, ears pricking toward him with something resembling recognition. "Morning," Ethan murmured, voice low. The horse shifted, no longer trembling the way it had the night before, but its stance was alert, ready for whatever the day brought. Ethan approached the stall slowly, hands visible, steps measured. The Mustang no longer reacted with wild panic the moment he neared. It followed him with wary eyes, but there was something else in its expression too. Trust, however fragile. He checked its water bucket, added fresh hay, and inspected the healing wounds. The bruising along the ribs was still severe, but the gashes on its flank were drying nicely. The horse was gaining strength faster than Ethan expected, which was good and dangerous, because stronger horses fought harder when cornered. And if the outfit returned and tried something reckless, the Mustang could hurt itself trying to escape. Ethan rested one hand briefly on the stall rail. "We need a plan, boy." The Mustang snorted softly as if answering him. By 7 a.m., Lucas's truck rolled into the yard, kicking up powdery snow in its wake. Ethan stepped outside before Lucas could knock. The older rancher took one look at Ethan's face and grimaced. "You didn't sleep, did you?" "Not well," Lucas admitted. "Got a feeling those men won't wait long." Ethan crossed his arms against the cold. "They said morning. That could mean any minute." Lucas shoved his gloved hands into his jacket pockets. "What's your plan?" Ethan hesitated. "I'm not sure yet." "Not good enough," Lucas snapped. "These aren't neighbors arguing over fencing. These are men who brand wild horses like property and don't care who they hurt." Which is exactly why I'm not handing him over. Lucas stared at him. Really stared. Ethan, they're stubborn and then they're stupid. I'm choosing the first. Doesn't look like it. Ethan's jaw tightened. I won't let them take him back to whatever they put him through. Lucas shook his head, pacing once before stopping again. Then hide him. Ethan blinked. Hide him where? Lucas motioned toward the foothills behind the ranch. You remember the old fire cabin? The one your dad used in the summers? No one goes up there anymore. It's barely standing. But the stable beside it is weatherproof, Lucas countered. You patch a couple holes, throw down bedding, he'd be fine for a few days. Ethan looked toward the distant ridge. The cabin was tucked into thick timber, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. Even locals sometimes forgot it existed. He rubbed his chin. He's strong enough to walk, but not climb the upper slope. You don't need to take him that high, Lucas said. Just far enough no truck can follow. The idea had weight. A chance to buy time. A chance to keep the Mustang out of sight. But it came with problems too. If I move him now, and the outfit drives up while I'm gone, Ethan started. I'll stay here, Lucas said immediately. If they show up, I'll stall them. Tell them you went into town. Tell them you're not on the property. Ethan met his gaze. And if they don't believe you? Lucas gave a humorless smirk. Then they'll waste their time figuring out why an old man is blocking the doorway instead of checking the hills. Ethan didn't like it. He didn't like any part of it. But the Mustang couldn't stay here. Not openly. Not when men like the outfit treated boundaries like suggestions. He exhaled sharply. All right, help me gear up. Inside the barn, Ethan looped a gentle rope halter around the Mustang's head. The horse stiffened but didn't resist. That alone told Ethan how intelligent and how traumatized this animal truly was. Easy now, he murmured, stroking the horse's neck. We're moving to safer ground. Lucas handed Ethan a lead rope. You sure he'll make it? We'll take it slow. They led the horse out through the back paddock gate, far from the driveway where the men might see tracks. Snow crunched under the Mustang's hooves. Breath plumed in thick clouds. The cold morning air smelled of pine and frozen earth. The horse followed reluctantly at first, tense but compliant. Each step looked cautious, like the ground itself might break beneath him. Trauma lived in the body, Ethan knew, not just memory. As they reached the tree line, Ethan paused and looked back at Lucas. If anything goes wrong, it won't, Lucas said. Lucas. The older man met his gaze, steady. If they give me trouble, I'll radio you, but I'll be fine. You just get that horse somewhere he won't be found. Ethan nodded, swallowing the knot in his throat. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, we're not out of this. The trail to the old fire cabin wound upward through dense pines. Snow muffled their steps, though the Mustang sometimes faltered when a buried branch shifted under his weight. Ethan kept a steady hand on the lead rope, murmuring encouragement when needed. They climbed for nearly 40 minutes before reaching the low ridge overlooking the valley. From here, Ethan could see his ranch sprawled below, a patchwork of white fields, wooden fences, and the long black line of the barn roof. Lucas's truck was still parked beside it. A tether of worry pulled tight in Ethan's chest, but he kept going. Just over the ridge, nestled between two slabs of granite, stood the cabin, weathered wood, sagging porch, a building that looked like it was holding its breath to stay upright. Beside it, the remains of the small stable still stood, roof intact, walls sturdy. It would do. Ethan led the Mustang inside. The horse sniffed the air, lifted its head high, and exhaled hard, but didn't panic. That was enough. Ethan spread fresh straw, checked for any loose nails, and secured the door from the inside with a wooden beam. The horse watched him the entire time. You'll be safe here, Ethan said softly, just for a day or two. The Mustang blinked once, slow. Ethan turned to leave, and stopped. Across the horse's shoulder, in the thin daylight streaming through the slats, he saw something he hadn't noticed before. Not the brand, but faint scars beneath it. Scars that weren't from rope burns, fences, or brush. These were deliberate, patterned, old but unmistakable. Someone hadn't just captured this horse, they had broken it, methodically. Ethan felt something cold settle into his chest, something heavier than fear, rage, real, human rage. Not impulsive, focused, clear. He stepped closer, examining the healed lines. The horse shifted, but didn't pull away. What did they do to you? Ethan whispered. The Mustang lowered its head, as if answering a question Ethan never wanted to ask. He realized then, this wasn't just a horse they wanted back. This was evidence. Evidence of abuse. Evidence someone would rather see destroyed then recovered. Ethan backed away slowly, his breath visible in the cold air. "They're not getting you," he said again. But this time it wasn't a promise, it was a vow. Lucas Granger had stood in plenty of barnyards, weathered plenty of winters, and argued with plenty of men who thought they knew more about ranching than he did. But nothing in his 63 years prepared him for waiting alone in Ethan Hale's yard, listening for the sound of a truck he hoped wouldn't come, yet knew inevitably would. The sun had barely cleared the ridge when Lucas spotted movement on the far slope. A dark shape first, then another, then the metallic glint of a front grille catching the morning light. A truck, same size, same stance, same predatory roll through the snow. The outfit. Lucas wiped his palms on his jacket. He had agreed to stall them, but now that the moment was here, the weight of it pressed against his ribs like a heavy hand. The truck rumbled closer, crunching over the frozen ground until it stopped just inside the entrance of the ranch. Two men stepped out, same ones as last night. Lucas recognized the way they moved, confident in that quiet, unearned way of men who believed consequences happened only to other people. The first man, tall with a dark canvas jacket, scanned the property with slow, calculating eyes. The second, shorter but broader, kept his hands tucked into his pockets, the posture of someone who didn't need to show his weapon to remind people he had one. Lucas forced a neutral expression and walked forward. "Morning." The taller man gave him a thin smile. "You the owner here?" "No, neighbor," Lucas answered. "Name's Lucas Granger. Ethan asked me to feed the livestock while he ran into town." "Into town?" the shorter man repeated, disbelief sharpening his tone. "Yeah," Lucas shrugged. "Left early. Roads are icy. Figured he better get things done before the weather turns again." The tall man stepped closer. Lucas smelled his cologne, something too clean, too polished for a rancher. "We came by last night," the man said. "He didn't mention he had company." Lucas kept his face steady. "He didn't. I came after he'd gone." "And why would he leave someone else on the property?" the shorter man asked. Lucas raised a brow. "Because that's what neighbors do out here." The tall man's smile grew colder. "Well, neighbor, we need to look around." Lucas's pulse jumped. "Look around for what?" "Something we lost," the shorter man said. Lucas crossed his arms, grounding himself. "Ethan's not here, and this is private land. You don't get to walk around just because you feel like it." The taller man tilted his head, studying him the way ranchers study cattle they don't trust. "Let's not start the day unfriendly. We're just making sure a certain animal didn't wander this way." "Whatever animal you're looking for," Lucas said, "you won't find it here." A long pause followed, long enough for Lucas to hear his own heartbeat in his ears. Finally, the tall man asked, "You sure about that?" Lucas swallowed. "Positive." The short one stepped forward until they were nearly chest to chest. "You know what horse we're talking about?" Lucas hesitated, half a second too long. The tall man's eyes narrowed. "Ah, so you do." Lucas cursed himself silently. He tried to recover. "All I know is Ethan found some tracks on the ridge. Didn't see any horse." "Tracks," the tall man repeated, voice soft but edged. "Funny. We saw tracks too." The shorter man took a step back, scanning the fences, the barn, the shed. "Where's that barn lead?" he asked, pointing. Lucas's heart dropped. "Nowhere. Just storage." "That right?" The tall man's voice lowered. "Mind if we take a look?" "Yes," Lucas said firmly. "I mind a lot." Both men stared at him now, weighing him, deciding what kind of obstacle he was. Lucas knew what they saw. An older man, grey around the temples, boots worn, jacket patched. Someone they assumed would crack under pressure. He stood taller. "You got paperwork?" Lucas asked. "Warrant? Livestock claims? Any proof at all you have rights to a horse you say is yours?" "We don't need paperwork," the short man snapped. "Then you're not stepping inside." The tall one closed the distance slowly, until his breath fogged in the cold inches from Lucas's face. "You know what happens when good people stick their noses in the wrong business?" he asked quietly. Lucas met his stare without flinching. "Yeah, they sleep fine at night. You should try it." The tall man smiled again, but this time the smile didn't reach anywhere near his eyes. "To let seem to answer." Inside the barn, unnoticed, a faint sound echoed, a rhythmic clatter of hooves, pacing. The Mustang sensed the tension even from the hill cabin miles away, but it wasn't close enough for the outfit to hear. The men didn't know Ethan had moved the horse, and Lucas needed to keep it that way. "Where exactly did Ethan go?" the shorter man asked. "Town," Lucas repeated. "To do what?" Lucas shrugged. "Supplies, feed. Maybe pick up meds for that stray dog he found." It was believable enough. Ethan was known for taking in injured animals. Half the valley had teased him for building a reputation as the accidental animal hospital. The tall man paced a slow circle around Lucas. "Funny thing," he said. "We drove a good stretch of the county before coming here. Ain't seen his truck anywhere." Lucas didn't blink. "Maybe he took the back roads." "In a storm?" The man scoffed. "Seems risky." "Ethan's whole life is risky," Lucas said. "Fences break, cattle wander, weather's cruel. Risk comes with the territory." The tall man considered that. Finally, he pointed toward the barn. "We're going inside." "No," Lucas said. "I wasn't asking." Lucas stepped in front of the doors, planting his boots like anchors. "You take one more step, and I call the sheriff." "Call him," the short man challenged. "Let's see how long he takes to drive from town." Lucas's grip tightened on his radio. "I'll still call." The tall man leaned in close. "We ain't looking for trouble, but if a certain Mustang wandered in here last night, we'll be taking him home, one way or another." Lucas didn't move. Not when the man stepped closer. Not when he reached toward the latch. Not when he began to lift it. "I wouldn't," Lucas said quietly. "And why's that?" "Because we don't treat animals like inventory in this valley, and anyone you're looking for isn't here." The tall man paused. For one fragile moment, Lucas thought he might back off. Then, a truck engine roared in the distance. Not theirs. Not Lucas's. A third vehicle approaching. All three men turned. Lucas felt blood surge hot in his chest. "Please don't be Ethan. Please don't be Ethan." The truck rounded the bend. Not Ethan's, thank God. Just old Mr. Bell from the next ranch over, bringing feed into town. The outfit men stiffened. More witnesses meant fewer options. The tall man stepped back from the barn. "We'll be back," he said. "Soon." Lucas didn't answer. The short man added, "Next time we expect cooperation." They climbed into their truck. The engine growled, tires spinning before gripping the frozen dirt. Snow kicked up behind them as they sped off. Not gone, just regrouping. Lucas exhaled for the first time in minutes, hands trembling. He pulled out his radio. "Ethan," he said, voice tight. "They came. They'll be back. And they're getting agitated." Static. Then Ethan's low reply, "I'm on my way. Keep the doors locked." The moment Lucas's voice cracked through the radio, Ethan felt the cold inside the cabin deepen, not the chill of winter, but the heavy, sinking cold of inevitability. The outfit wasn't testing anymore. They were tightening the circle. He clipped the radio back to his belt and turned toward the Mustang, who stood alert inside the makeshift stall. The horse's ears angled forward, nostrils flaring, sensing the shift in the atmosphere before Ethan even moved. "They came," Ethan said quietly. "I have to get back." The Mustang took a step toward him. Not aggressive, not panicked. Something else. Something Ethan couldn't place. "I won't be long," he tried to assure the horse. "Lucas bought us time, but I need to be there in case they return." The Mustang pawed the ground once, sharp, decisive. Ethan paused. It wasn't restlessness and it wasn't fear. It looked deliberate, like the horse was trying to communicate something he couldn't vocalize. "What is it?" Ethan asked. The horse swung its head toward the door, then toward Ethan, then back again, as if he expected Ethan to bring him along. "No," Ethan said immediately. "It's safer if you stay hidden." The Mustang pinned its ears, not in anger, but frustration. He paced a tight half-circle, then came back to the door, breathing hard and low. Ethan stepped closer, frowning. "You think being alone when they come is worse, don't you?" The horse didn't react outwardly, but the tension in its muscles said enough. Ethan clenched his jaw. He didn't have the luxury of overthinking. Lucas was alone. The outfit was angry. And if they realized Ethan wasn't on the property, or worse, noticed tracks leading toward the hills, the margin for error would disappear. "We'll talk about this later," Ethan murmured, giving the horse one last look before slipping outside. The cold slapped him across the face as he shut the stable door. Snow had softened since morning, but his footprints still pressed deep into the powder. He retraced them quickly, careful to avoid leaving additional paths. Once over the ridge, he broke into a jog toward where he'd tethered Ruby in a sheltered grove. The mare lifted her head as he approached, ears flicking with recognition. "Easy, girl," Ethan whispered, swinging into the saddle. "We need to move." He nudged her into a brisk trot, then into a careful downhill run. The trail twisted through pine and rock, slick in places where melted snow had refrozen overnight. Ruby navigated it with practiced confidence, her hooves striking the ground in steady rhythm. As he rode, Ethan replayed Lucas's words through the radio. "They'll be back. They're getting agitated." Angry men made mistakes. But they also did stupid, violent things. The outfit wasn't lawless. Not in the reckless, unpredictable sense. They were organized, purposeful. Men who didn't chase wild horses out of sport, but profit. The Mustang wasn't a lost animal to them. It was property. And property being hidden was an insult. And men like them didn't take insults lightly. When Ethan crested the final slope overlooking his ranch, relief mixed with dread hit him all at once. Lucas was standing outside the barn, arms folded, shoulders tight. His truck was parked sideways, blocking the drive in a makeshift barricade. Ethan urged Ruby downhill fast. Lucas noticed him and waved, a signal of urgency, not greeting. Ethan dismounted before the mare fully stopped and strode toward him. "Are you all right?" "Fine," Lucas said, though sweat prickled his forehead in the cold air. "But those men, Ethan, they're not bluffing. They're watching, waiting. I saw their truck parked near the ridge road 10 minutes after they left." Ethan's stomach tightened. "They're circling, more like surveilling," Lucas corrected grimly. "They think the horse is still here, and they think you're hiding him on the property." Ethan blew out a long breath, forcing his pulse to settle. "He's safe for now." Lucas nodded, glancing toward the distant hills. "Good, but this ain't over." Ethan looked around the yard, scanning for tracks, signs of movement, anything out of place. The entire ranch felt tense, like the land itself was holding its breath. "Did they try to get inside?" Ethan asked. "They were close," Lucas admitted. "If Old Bell hadn't driven by, I don't know what would have happened." Ethan rubbed his forehead. "I owe you." Lucas waved him off. "Just don't make me stare down 3 armed horse thieves before breakfast again." Ethan cracked a humorless smile. "I'll try." Lucas's expression softened briefly, then tightened again. "Ethan, what's your plan now? They're not going away." "I know." Ethan's eyes drifted toward the barn, then the hills. "But something happened at the cabin." "What?" Ethan hesitated. "The horse, he didn't want me to leave, not in a panicked way. More like he knew something was coming." Lucas frowned. "Ethan, he's a horse. He's not reacting on instinct," Ethan interrupted. "I know wild behavior. This is different. He remembers something." Lucas's expression changed then, less skeptical, more troubled. "What exactly did you see?" Ethan described the pacing, the pawing, the way the Mustang seemed to understand the danger of being alone. Lucas listened silently. After a moment he said, "If he remembers them, he remembers what they did, and fear like that. It don't fade easy." Ethan nodded. "Exactly. Still," Lucas added, "that doesn't change our problem. They'll search again. Harder next time." Ethan already knew that, and yet there was something heavier in his chest, something forming into certainty. "I need to move him again," Ethan said. "Further, higher ground, somewhere no vehicle can reach." Lucas blinked. "Ethan, that's risky. He's barely healed." "I know, but staying put is worse. And there's something else." He described the scars under the brand, scars deliberate in pattern, too specific to be accidents. Lucas went pale. "Ethan, that's not typical breaking. That's cruelty." "Exactly," Ethan said. "They weren't training him, they were torturing him." Lucas stepped back, running a hand over his face. "Jesus. And if they want him back this badly," Ethan continued, "it's not because he's valuable, it's because he's evidence. Evidence of something they can't afford for anyone to see." Lucas swallowed hard. "Then they'll do a hell of a lot more than knock next time." Ethan didn't disagree. Before Lucas could speak again, Ruby snorted sharply, ears swiveling toward the northern fence line. Ethan turned. A distant engine growled, not close, but moving, slow, purposeful, familiar. Lucas inhaled sharply. They're back. Not at the driveway this time, but coming in from the back road. The one ranchers rarely used, the one only locals knew existed, and the Mustang was miles away, alone in a cabin he could not defend. Ethan's heartbeat slammed once, hard. "They're not searching the barn," he realized. "They're searching the hills." Lucas looked at him, eyes wide. "Ethan, they're going after him." Ethan didn't hesitate. He grabbed Ruby's reins, swung into the saddle, and kicked the mare into a dead run toward the mountains. "Keep them talking if they come here," he shouted back. Lucas cupped his hands to his mouth. "Ethan, what's the plan?" Ethan didn't look back. "I'm not letting them reach him first." Snow exploded beneath Ruby's hooves as Ethan pushed her up the ridge trail, cold air slicing into his lungs with every breath. The mare wasn't built for sprinting uphill through broken terrain, but Ruby was loyal. She felt his urgency and responded with every ounce of strength in her body. Behind him, the muffled growl of an engine echoed through the pines. The outfit was climbing the mountain from the northern approach. The same direction the old fire cabin sat. The same direction Ethan had taken the Mustang that morning. "Come on, girl," he urged, leaning forward, hands tight around the reins. "We can't let them reach him." Ruby surged forward, snow scattering in a spray behind her. The trail narrowed between two granite outcrops, then twisted sharply left around a stand of pines bent by decades of winter storms. Ethan dug his boots into the stirrups to stay balanced. His breath billowed like smoke in the icy air. The truck engine roared again, closer now. Ethan didn't know if the outfit knew about the cabin. Maybe they were just sweeping the mountains, or maybe they had followed subtle signs he hadn't erased well enough. Maybe they weren't guessing at all. "Faster, Ruby," he whispered. "Please." Meanwhile, at the old fire cabin, the Mustang stood rigid inside the small stable. His ears twitched toward the north, then toward the west, then back again. The cold wind carried scents and sounds miles across the frozen land, and what the horse sensed wasn't just wind. It was movement, human movement, wrong movement. The Mustang paced once, twice, then stomped hard enough to rattle frost from the rafters. He remembered those engines. He remembered the sound of steel gates slamming. He remembered shouting, voices that didn't ask but commanded. And above all, he remembered pain. A deep, instinctual tremor rolled through his muscles, but something else surged beneath it. Not fear, readiness. Ethan pushed Ruby to the timberline, breath tearing in his chest. Branches whipped at his jacket, lashing his arms as he ducked low. The trail leveled briefly before climbing again, steeper now, icy in patches where little sunlight reached. He risked a glance back. A dark truck crawled along the lower slope, headlights bouncing through the trees. The outfit wasn't guessing anymore. They were following. Deliberate, controlled, confident. Ruby snorted, ears pinned back. "I know," Ethan said, patting her neck. "Just a little farther." At the next bend, Ethan pulled the reins sharply and dismounted in one smooth motion. He couldn't ride Ruby all the way. Hoofprints would give away everything. He led her off the trail to a hollow beneath a fallen pine. "Stay here," he whispered. Ruby pawed the ground anxiously but didn't follow when he turned toward the last stretch of the climb. Ethan ran. Boots slipped on ice. Snow stung his face. The burn in his lungs sharpened with every stride. But he didn't stop. The cabin's roof soon appeared through the trees, weathered wood patched with snow, smoke curling faintly from where he had heated the stable the night before. The stable door was still shut, no tracks leading in or out. Relief loosened Ethan's chest. Then he froze. A second set of tracks was there, faint, almost invisible, coming from the north. Human tracks. Fresh. "Damn it," Ethan breathed. He sprinted. Inside the stable, the Mustang had planted himself in the center of the small space. His body was angled toward the door, muscles coiled, ears pricked so sharply they trembled. His breath came in short bursts, not from exhaustion, but anticipation. The footsteps outside paused. Snow shifted. A hand tested the latch. The Mustang lowered his head, not to flee, to charge. The door creaked open, but only an inch. Not enough for a person to enter. Enough only for scent. And the Mustang recognized it instantly. One of the men who had branded him, handled him, broken him. His entire body snapped into focus. The footsteps retreated slightly, perhaps to check surroundings, but the Mustang remained fixed in place, breath hot, hooves braced. The moment the door opened wider, even a fraction, he would bolt, not away, through. Ethan rounded the cabin's corner and grabbed the old pitchfork he kept there for clearing brush. It wasn't a weapon, but it was something. He pressed his back against the outer wall, listening. A man's voice drifted around the cabin, low, annoyed. "Tracks come right up here. Don't play dumb." He moved it. Another voice answered, sharper. "Then why ain't the door open?" "He could have locked it. Horse wouldn't be able to—" A sudden metallic click cut the man off. The stable latch. Ethan didn't think. He moved. He swung around the side of the cabin just as the door cracked open. One of the outfit men leaned in, posture careless, unaware of the danger in front of him. "Easy now," the man muttered. "Come on out." Ethan shouted before he could stop himself. "Get back!" The man turned. Too late. The Mustang exploded through the door like a shot of living thunder. Wood splintered. The man stumbled backward, arms flailing, feet sliding across the snow. The Mustang didn't trample him, but he knocked the man flat with a brutal shoulder strike, hooves skidding across ice. Snow erupted around them in a cloud of white. The second outfit man grabbed for something under his coat. Ethan charged. He slammed into the man, driving him backward into the cabin wall. The pitchfork clattered out of his grip, but the impact stunned the man long enough for Ethan to shove him off balance. The Mustang wheeled around, breath blasting through his nostrils, tail high, ears pinned. But he didn't run. He stood with Ethan, side by side. The first man scrambled to his feet, fury twisting his expression. "You son of a—" The Mustang stamped, threatening. The second man regained his footing and reached again under his coat. "Don't!" Ethan barked, stepping between him and the horse. "You take one more step toward him, and I swear I'll—" The man froze, not because of Ethan's threat, but because Ethan had lifted something off the ground during the scuffle. A dropped radio. Ethan held it up. "Sheriff's frequency," he said, "loud and clear." It wasn't. Ethan had no idea if the radio had any law channels, but the outfit men didn't know that. The first man spat into the snow. "This ain't over." "No," Ethan said, chest heaving, "it isn't, but you're done for today." The men exchanged a look, cold, murderous, before turning down the slope, moving fast. Ethan didn't chase them. He didn't need to. They had seen the Mustang, free, strong, defiant, and worst of all, not afraid of them anymore. Ethan turned to the Mustang. The horse's sides heaved with adrenaline, but his eyes locked on Ethan's, steady and unbroken. "You warned me," Ethan said softly. "I should have listened." For the first time, the Mustang stepped forward and touched his muzzle gently to Ethan's shoulder. Trust. Full. Undeniable. Ethan exhaled shakily. Now everything had changed. The outfit didn't just want the horse back. They wanted him silenced. Ethan led the Mustang down the slope slowly, one hand on the rope, the other steadying himself against branches heavy with snow. His muscles shook, not from exertion alone, but from the adrenaline still burning through him. He kept glancing back at the clearing near the cabin, half expecting the outfit men to return. But the mountain was silent now, as if holding its breath after the outburst of violence. When they reached the hollow where Ruby waited, Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. The mare nickered softly at the Mustang, ears pricked. "I know," Ethan murmured to her. "He's one hell of a fighter." The Mustang snorted, shaking his mane as if offended by understatement. Ethan stroked his neck. "You saved us back there." The horse didn't lower his head meekly like a broken animal or flare in aggression like a wild one. Instead, he stood tall, determined, alert, a creature who knew danger intimately and still chose to face it. Ethan swallowed hard. He'd grown up around animals. He knew their instincts, fears, and habits. But this was something deeper. Not mystical, not supernatural, just a horse whose survival had sharpened into a kind of awareness most humans never developed. "We've got to get back to the ranch," Ethan said quietly. "Lucas is out there alone." The Mustang flicked an ear toward the trail, as if agreeing. Ethan mounted Ruby and took the Mustang's lead rope gently. "Stay close, and no more charging through doors unless I tell you to." The Mustang huffed, which Ethan decided to interpret as a promise. "Sorry to ubiquitous." The descent was faster than the climb, but no easier. Snow had softened under the mid-morning sun and refrozen in patches, creating slick plates that cracked under their weight. Ethan kept glancing toward the northern slope, where the outfit truck had retreated. They weren't gone, they were regrouping. He couldn't shake the memory of the second man's hand reaching inside his coat. They had come armed, not for conversation, but for recovery, or removal. And the Mustang had become both a symbol and a problem. A horse with scars like his was evidence of illegal capture. A horse with a brand like his was proof of criminal ownership. A horse that attacked his abusers could not be allowed to exist. Ethan tightened his grip on the reins. "They're gonna come harder now," he muttered. Ruby tossed her head nervously. Even she sensed it. When the ranch finally came into view, Ethan spotted Lucas pacing near the barn, hands on his hips, posture etched with worry. The moment he saw Ethan descending the hill, with the Mustang intact, relief washed across his face, but only for a moment, because he also saw something else, the fury burning under Ethan's calm surface. "You all right?" Lucas called as Ethan rode up. "Fine," Ethan answered, though his knuckles were raw from the scuffle. Lucas's eyes landed on the Mustang. "He's okay?" "He did more protecting than I did," Ethan said, sliding off Ruby. Lucas blinked. "What happened up there?" Ethan motioned him inside the barn. He didn't want the open wind carrying their words anywhere but here. Once the doors shut behind them, the Mustang paced slowly inside one of the larger stalls, sniffing the hay but too alert to settle. Ruby stood nearby, shaking off the cold. Ethan rested his arms on the rail of the stall. "They found the cabin." Lucas froze. "You're sure?" "Positive. They followed tracks or they followed instinct. Either way, they got close. Too close." Lucas swore quietly. "Did they see him?" "Yes." Lucas went pale. "Then this is bad. This is real bad." "It gets worse," Ethan said. He told him everything. The stable door cracking open, the Mustang charging like a battering ram, the man nearly getting trampled, the dropped radio, the threats. Lucas listened without interrupting. His face hardened line by line, like stone exposed to years of weather. When Ethan finished, Lucas ran a hand over his beard. "They're not going to walk away from that." "I know. They'll retaliate. Hard." "I know. And they'll come soon. Maybe tonight." "I know." Lucas exhaled through his nose. "So what's our move?" Ethan looked at the Mustang. He wasn't just a victim. Not anymore. He was a survivor with knowledge Ethan didn't have. "That horse," Ethan said slowly, "remembers things." "Of course he does," Lucas replied. "Animals remember pain." "No," Ethan insisted. "Not just pain. Details, scents, footsteps, people. He reacts differently to each of them. And those scars under the brand? Those weren't from breaking or training. They were from punishment, systematic." Lucas frowned. "So what are you saying?" Ethan leaned against the stall rail. "I think he saw something. Something he wasn't supposed to see. Not just cruelty. Something bigger." Lucas's expression sharpened. "Like what?" Ethan hesitated. "I don't know yet, but whatever it was, it's the reason they want him dead." The Mustang lifted his head, ears flicking toward Ethan's voice. He stepped forward until his muzzle brushed against Ethan's forearm. Lucas raised a brow. "Huh. He trusts you." Ethan nodded, but his voice stayed quiet. "He's choosing to." Lucas rubbed the back of his neck. "Then let's not make that choice a mistake." They spent the next hour preparing the barn. Not barricading, it would look suspicious. Not hiding the Mustang, they'd already seen him, but bracing. Lucas checked the tools, the old feed room locks, the back exits. Ethan tested the radios, reinforced the stall doors, and moved anything breakable out of reach should the Mustang startle. But the horse didn't startle. He watched the men work with intense, steady eyes, as if he knew exactly what they were doing. At one point, Ethan paused and leaned toward him. "What did they do to you?" The Mustang didn't look away. Lucas stopped beside him. "There's more you haven't told me, isn't there?" Ethan sighed. "Yeah." He told Lucas about the faint, patterned scars beneath the brand, scars that didn't match typical rope burns or shoot injuries. They looked like restraints, repeated contact marks. And in some places, burns that didn't match branding irons. Lucas cursed under his breath. "Jesus, Ethan, that's not just illegal, that's—" "I know. Why would they do that to a horse?" Ethan looked toward the mountains, at the path the outfit had taken earlier. "Because the horse wasn't the point. Whoever they were selling to, whatever operation they were running, the Mustang saw something. Maybe during capture, maybe during transport." Lucas rubbed his forehead. "You think they tortured him to break him?" Ethan shook his head. "They were trying to erase something." The barn fell silent. Even the horses seemed to hold their breath. Finally, Lucas straightened. "Then we need to find out what." Ethan nodded slowly. "And we need to survive long enough to hear the full story." Lucas peered toward the horizon through a sliver in the barn boards. Clouds gathered thick and heavy over the mountains. The kind of sky Montana ranchers knew well. "Are storms coming?" Lucas murmured. "Yeah," Ethan said, "but not the kind that drops snow." The Mustang stomped once. Loud, deliberate. A warning. The sky over Montana bruised into shades of iron and violet as evening approached. Cold wind swept across the valley, bending dry grass and rattling loose boards on the barn. Ethan Hale stood in the doorway, one hand resting on the stall gate, where the Mustang watched him with unblinking intensity. Lucas paced behind him. "It's quiet," he muttered. "Too quiet," Ethan replied. The stillness wasn't natural. Not for a winter evening, not with the outfit out there. The Mustang shifted, snorting a low warning. He sensed it before either man did. Tension in the air, the way predators disturb the land around them. Ethan stroked the horse's neck. "It's all right, boy, we're ready." But he wasn't sure they were. Not truly. The approach. The first sign was the vibration of the ground, a deep, rhythmic thrum. Engines, multiple. Ethan's heart sank. They brought more men. Lucas's jaw tensed. "Damn it. Ethan, we can still call the sheriff. They'll never arrive in time," Ethan said. "And even if they did, The outfit would be gone by then, with the horse or with us buried in the snow. Lucas swallowed hard. Then we stand our ground. Ethan nodded. We stand. He walked to the center of the barn, forcing his breathing to steady. The Mustang stepped forward until his muzzle touched Ethan's shoulder. A gesture of solidarity, of understanding. Ethan rested a hand against the horse's jaw. "You've run far enough," he whispered. "Today we end it." The arrival. 3 trucks rolled into the yard, larger than the one from before, heavy-duty, outfitted with reinforced grills and mounted lights. Doors slammed, boots crunched on frozen ground. Voices, low, decisive. The outfit had come not as thieves, but as enforcers. Ethan stepped outside, Lucas beside him. Cold air cut across his face. 5 men approached. The leader stood in the middle, the same man who had forced his way to the barn days earlier. His jaw was tight, eyes narrowed with barely disguised rage. "You've caused us a lot of trouble, Hale," he called out. "All over a damn Mustang." Ethan didn't raise his voice. "He's not yours." The leader's smile was thin, cruel. "Insurance companies don't agree. State brand inspectors don't agree. Law doesn't agree." Lucas barked a laugh. "You don't give a damn about the law." The leader ignored him. His boots crunched closer. "Where's the horse?" "Not going anywhere with you." The man's eyes hardened. "You should have stayed out of our business." "You made it my business," Ethan said. "When you tortured a wild horse and left him to die." One of the men shifted uneasily. Ethan caught it, barely. A flicker of guilt, a splinter in the facade. Not all of them believed in the cruelty they'd carried out. Good. Division was leverage. "Tuaskidam marked the truth." Ethan took a step forward. "I saw the scars not from breaking, from restraints, from electrical prods, and from something worse, something systematic." The leader's jaw twitched. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about," Ethan said. "You weren't training him. You were testing him." Silence fell across the yard like a dropped hammer. Lucas turned to Ethan, confused. "Testing?" Ethan kept his gaze locked on the leader. "You used the Mustang in your illegal endurance auctions, the ones held off-grid, the ones where buyers pay to watch horses pushed past their limits, sometimes until they collapse." A muscle in the leader's cheek twitched. Ethan pressed. "He wasn't supposed to survive, was he?" "You don't know a damn thing," the leader snapped, but his tone cracked. Ethan pointed at him. "You lost control of him. He escaped, and now he's evidence." That word, evidence, tightened every face in the outfit crew. One man reached for something inside his coat. Not a weapon. Paper. He pulled out a set of forged transport documents. Ethan didn't flinch. "You brought fake paperwork?" Ethan asked. "Really?" The leader's expression shifted from anger to calculation. "Look, Hale, this doesn't need to get ugly. Hand him over and we walk away. You'll never hear from us again. And if I don't..." The leader's eyes went cold. "Then we take him." Östermadandasu the standoff. The men stepped forward. Ethan stepped back toward the barn, not retreating, drawing them to a choke point. Lucas whispered, "Ethan, this isn't smart." "No," Ethan replied. "It's necessary." The Mustang sensed him approaching and strode to the open stall door, body taut, ears sharp as blades. The leader noticed. "That's him?" Ethan placed a hand on the Mustang's neck. "This horse remembers everything you did." The leader laughed. "He's an animal. He remembers nothing." "You're wrong," Ethan said quietly. "And that's why you're here." He opened the barn door wider, letting the Mustang step into view. The outfit members froze, not because of Ethan, because of the horse. The Mustang stood tall, breath steaming in sharp bursts, eyes fixed on the men who had hurt him. The scar under the brand glowed faintly in the fading light. Recognition, fear, and defiance, all in one gaze. One of the younger outfit men stepped back. "Boss, maybe we shouldn't..." "Shut up," the leader snapped. He reached for a lasso at his belt. The Mustang lowered his head, hooves carving into the dirt like a sprung trap. "Don't do it," Ethan warned. "It's just a horse," the leader said. "Move." He swung the rope. The Mustang exploded. The fight. The horse surged forward, not wild, not uncontrolled, but with the precision of an animal who had survived hell and learned exactly when to strike. Ethan grabbed the lead rope and swung it to redirect the charge, aiming not to harm but to shock the outfit into retreat. The leader stumbled backward, rope dropping from his hand. Lucas stepped in between them with a shovel held like a bat. "Back off!" 2 outfit men moved to flank him, but the Mustang reared, hooves flashing. Snow flew, shouts erupted. One man tripped and fell hard on the ice. Another reached into his jacket. "Don't!" Ethan yelled. The leader stepped forward, fury overtaking caution. "Enough, move aside!" The Mustang charged him, not with the intent to kill but to end the threat. The leader dove aside, slipping on a patch of ice. His shoulder slammed into the truck door. He cried out, gripping his arm. Pain took the fight out of him instantly. His men froze, all of them. No one wanted to step toward a Mustang that had just flattened their boss like an avalanche. Ethan shouted, "Nobody move!" Silence swallowed the yard. Heavy, final, undeniable. The leader groaned, struggling to sit upright. We'll be back," he hissed. "No," Ethan said. He pulled out his phone and pressed record. "You won't." He filmed the brand, the scars, the men, the trucks, the forged documents still lying in the snow. The outfit froze, because suddenly, this wasn't intimidation. It was evidence, real, tangible, impossible to explain away evidence. "Oh, you come back," Ethan said, voice steady, "and I send this to the state brand inspector, the Department of the Interior, and every rancher in Montana. You'll lose your contracts, your land, your licenses, your freedom." The leader's jaw quivered. Ethan lowered the phone. "Leave." No one argued. No one hesitated. They loaded the trucks, their confidence shattered like thin ice in spring. Within seconds, engines roared to life. Within minutes, they were gone. Sauti Natatans canceled the end of fear. Ethan stood in the yard long after the dust settled, breath visible in the cold dusk. Lucas leaned against the barn wall, trembling with exhaustion. You did it," Lucas said. "No," Ethan replied softly. He turned to the Mustang. He did. The horse stepped closer, pressing his head lightly against Ethan's chest, a gesture of final trust, of peace. This time, Ethan let himself cry. Sausi Kaiku epilogue. Months later, spring melted the last of the winter ice. Grass grew green across the renewed valley, and in the open pasture behind Ethan's barn, the Mustang, now named Valor, ran like a creature reborn. No ropes, no brands, no fear, just wind and freedom. Ethan leaned on the fence, watching him. "You changed a lot around here," Lucas said beside him. Ethan nodded. "He saved a lot more than I did." Lucas smiled. Montana remembers stories like this. Ethan watched as Valor galloped, mane flying, a symbol of resilience stronger than any brand burned into flesh. "No," Ethan said quietly. "Montana remembers truth. And the truth was this. A dying Mustang changed a man's life and exposed a darkness that would never again take root on these mountains. The past didn't own him anymore. Neither did fear, and neither did they.